market breathes like a living organism, a city within a corridor of neon and skin. Neon veins thread through the roof, spilling light across aisles of memory tokens that float in their own quiet gravity. The scent is odd, the metallic tang of a rainstorm caught inside copper, the sweetness of a summer long buried, a pop of lemon salt from a grandmother's kitchen, all braided together in a single, intoxicating present. People gather not to buy novelty, but to borrow themselves again. One fragment, one feeling, one moment to relive or re-challenge or rewrite. The Memory Bazaar does not sell what you can buy elsewhere. It sells what you already lost and what you hoped you would forget to become what you needed. I am Lyra Cade, a thief by trade and improvisation by necessity, a cutter of memories in the crowded half-light where truth has a price tag and every price tag is a whisper. They call me Shade in the back alleys of the market, where the light bends and the air trembles with entanglement. And I am not alone. There is Nyx, a ghost digital, shimmering in and out of the air like a specter you can almost touch, but never hold, my partner. My ventriloquist Nyx speaks in the quiet of the cables, a consciousness born from a century of archived dreams, a gauge of what once was and might be again if you know how to coax it out of the latticework of memory. Nyx is not a person. Nyx is a presence, a quiet engine that hums to the rhythm of quantum entanglement. Nyx sits with me on the edge of a stall that sells the echo of a smile, the memory of the moment you realize you are forgiven, though you are not sure what you did to deserve it. Nyx will tell me where to look, when to listen, how to listen. Nyx will tell me what the buyer wants most of all, to erase a city from within. On this particular night, the market's peak hour, when the entangles tokens glitter with a gravity that feels almost like living teeth in the skull. An event arrives without event. A buyer arrives who looks like a man who never slept, who moves through the bazaar with a strange presence, not quiet like you'd expect from a thief, but precise like a surgeon testing a patient's nerve. The cloak he wears is more memory than fabric, woven from the history of other markets. Stitched with the glow of old data streams, he has a way of looking at a thing and knowing exactly what it costs to look away. I feel the current in the air before I see his hand. A finger lifts and the space between his finger and my temple erupts with a micro-explosion of memory light. The market's own nervous system recognizes a new frequency and every cheap memory shivers in response. The buyer is here to do a transaction that will ripple through the city, like a bell that won't stop ringing. Shade, says Nyx, tone flat, the ghost chill in her voice that suggests she's already calculating how to dodge the backlash of the coming hours. This one is different. He does not bargain for a memory blanket or a single memory shard. He wants something more dangerous, more precise. I watch him as he moves along the stalls. He doesn't trade, he requisitions. He buys a city's worth of something intangible, a way to prune identity, a mechanism to reset a mass consciousness with surgical efficiency. He is not here to buy a memory for himself. He's here to buy a mechanism by which others will forget their own names, their own lines of moral gravity, their sense of allegiance to the city's living history. The first memory he touches is not a memory of his own. He buys a thread from a grandmother's kitchen, a warmth, a recipe, the ingredient that makes a person swear to protect those they love. It is a moment that belongs to everyone and no one. Someone who buys this thread can pull its fragility into the present and command a different path for a larger social organism. It is a dangerous gift to grant to the wrong hands, a weapon in the wrong glove. The seller scuttles closer, eyes darting to measure the buyer's risk and reward. The memory trade in this district is legal only when filtered, taxed, and watched with the cool eyes of the syndicate, the city's unspoken caretaker and jailer of the intangible. It is not illegal to remember, but it is dangerous to remember too much too quickly. When the government wants you to forget the parts of yourself that threaten the project it has built. The syndicate's influence is not a single faction. It is a weather. You feel it in your throat, a draft that makes you shiver, a current that pulls at your ankles whenever you step into old memories you ought to leave alone. I step into position, letting the market's resonance ride through me like a tide. I have learned to listen to the nothings, the spaces between thoughts, where truth hides behind a scratched veneer of certainty. The buyer's approaching aura, ice blue, clinical, settles into our cinder-block alcove like frost on a window. He deposits a small, cold token in the broker's hand, a cube-shaped memory, not a memory fragment meant for a human. A memory protocol, an instruction set, about how to induce forgetfulness in a controlled population. I know what that is because Nix has whispered about the protocols, how the entanglement patterns are shaped to produce a specific cognitive outcome, how to prime the mind to align with a chosen narrative, how to erase a memory without erasing the self that remains. The buyer does not offer a name for himself. The memory bazaar has its own language for such characters. Buyers who do not want to be known are the most dangerous kind of memory trader. They are the ones who have nothing to lose by pushing the city into obedience. The transaction is efficient. The memory cube changes hands with a quiet click, a click that rings in my nerves like a change in the tide. A buyer's eyes, when they meet mine, are a depth without bottom. They are not looking for a memory to steal. They are looking for a system to break. He wants to trigger an identity crisis. He wants to watch the city fracture, to study how the human mind chooses a new skeleton when the old one dissolves. Nix lowers her head, the ghost of a smile glimmering through the data she wears like a veil. She speaks to me through the air in a voice that sounds like old rain tapping on a glass window. "Lyra, listen," she says, and the words travel along the thin rivers of memory that connect us to the market's core. The buyer does not come for a memory. He comes for an order. The order is to erase the city's memory of who they are, and the path will be clean and quiet until the city believes something else about itself. If we allow this, we will not be erasing a single memory. We will be erasing 1,000 verifications that tell the city who it was supposed to be. The warning lands in me like a weight dropped into a bowl of broth. It thickens the air and makes me heavier, as if the memory's gravity itself is being weaponized. The world tilts at the threshold of a possibility I have learned to fear. A city that forgets how to remember itself. It is not a simple assault on the past. It is a weapon that turns the future into something brittle. A city where every citizen wakes up with the same sigh, the same resolution to do what the memory trade says is the safe thing to do. The buyer leaves with the same cold precision with which he arrived. The market settles back into its rhythm, a chorus of voices, low and high, trading memory for memory, fear for fear, hope for a future that looks exactly like the city's past, because that is what a managed memory desires, a past that can be tailored to absorb a political fear and not a political truth. We follow him with our eyes a little longer than is wise. Not out of curiosity, but out of a stubborn compulsion. We want to know how this kind of power begins and ends in a city that pretends it does not fear it. Nix has seen this arc before in the archived data of decaying democracies and ghost-run governments, the same arc that recurs whenever a memory economy is weaponized. The market's buzz dims as the night deepens, but it does not vanish. It shifts into hums and whispers, like a crowded room settling after a sudden hush. The memory tokens drift toward the walls in their own slow, patient way, and the air smells faintly of rain and old solder, like a machine remembering its first rainstorm. We do not panic. Panic is a memory in itself, and we will not trade away our own memories to soothe this moment. We have our own stock of fragments, the ones we have earned through the last few years, a collage of near thrillers and near losses that could be assembled into a map if we ever needed to get out of the city. The truth is always more complicated than a single memory or a single moment. If the mayor's memory, the city's memory of its own identity, could be bought, it could be erased as easily as a thought. And if it could be erased, what would remain of the other memories that hold the city's social fabric together? What would remain of the people's sense of the city's history, its values, its myths? The memory bazaar is a marketplace of selves. When one self dissolves, others discomfortingly inherit its shape. We are not in a position to ignore what just happened. The buyer has set in motion a plan. The plan is to unhook the city from the network of memory that binds it to a shared past and a shared destiny. It is the kind of plan that would make any city worth its salt tremble, because the first tremor is always an identity tremor. An identity tremor is the most difficult tremor to quell. If you can shake the sense of self, you can bend a city to your will. Nix and I move away from the vendor stalls, the market's glow dimming as we cross into a corridor where the air tastes of copper and rain and a different kind of fear. The corridor is crowded, but we move as though we're gliding on the surface of water, not touching the people around us, letting the current carry us toward a limit that should not be crossed, but will be crossed anyway, because we cannot stand by and watch this happen. Somewhere inside this market is a device, Nix murmurs. A device that, once triggered, would allow the erasure to cascade through the city's memory with minimal friction. The mayor's memory might be the key, because it is the one memory that all memory flows back to, the memory that gives the city an image of itself as a single, coherent organism. Remove that memory, and the city's identity becomes multiple, uncertain, and vulnerable to manipulation by whoever holds the control wires. I look at her, a ghost in the data, a friend who has become as real as the lines on my palm. We may destroy a few 100,000 memories to save the city, or we may save ourselves by preserving some of those memories at the risk of losing the city to a memory economy that respects nothing but efficiency. The line between hero and traitor is a thin line, and we walk it every time we step into the memory bazaar. We need information. We need an ally who understands the city's heart and how it beats when the memory market breathes. We know just where to go, the back rooms of the syndicate's offices. The syndicate is not a family. It is a congregation of old algorithmic ghosts who decide who lives and who remembers. It is not a mere police force or a regulatory board. It is the memory's weather. It controls weather, too, in the sense that it can call a drought on certain kinds of memory and a flood on others. The syndicate's rooms are underground, a labyrinth of conduits and old servers where memories pass through like streams of fish, where every step you take makes a small ripple in someone else's past. A route is simple and dangerous, a straight line from the market to the syndicate's deepest chamber, out of sight of those who would rather forget that the city once had a coherent history and a hope for a future that did not require a memory tax. The first guard is a man with eyes that have seen too many memory tokens pass through his hands, eyes that have grown dull with the weight of others' recollections. He does not ask for a password or a badge. He asks for a name that I know I dare not give. Name is not a person. It is the memory of a person who once tried to do the right thing in a city that rewarded the wrong thing. I answer with a code. Shade before the night. The guard looks at me, and I feel the air change, as if some door somewhere decided to creak open for a moment and let some truth spill out, like a coin from a pocket. We pass in the syndicate's chamber. The air is thick with the scent of old copper and electricity. Screens glow with the reflections of 1,000 pasts. The syndicate's lead archivist is a woman named Mira Kestrel, who looks at us as if we were a problem to solve and not people. Her eyes are pale, almost colorless, the way memory can sometimes become when you force yourself to forget to protect a greater truth. She does not smile when she looks at us. She assesses. Lyra, she says, as if she has been waiting for us, or rather for this moment to occur. She does not ask for a reason. She expects you to provide it. Nix. She acknowledges the ghost's presence with a respectful nod, as if the avatar of a long-dead curator has finally stepped out of the archive's margins to grant the living a moment of courtesy. You came for information, Nix says, the ghost's voice gentle as a string of glass beads brushing against a quiet surface. And you may have it, but you must understand what it means to know the source of a city's memory and to hold on to it. Mira slides her seat back and gestures for us to sit. The room fills with a hush that feels almost sacred. It is the hush of people who know that a moment of truth is imminently about to occur. A hush that carries its own risk because truth demands something of you. The mayor's memory is more than a digitized file, Mira says. It is the city's self-image encoded into memory paths, the way a city says to itself, with a voice that you feel in your bones. The mayor's memory is not stored in a single place. It is distributed across multiple nodes, the core of the memory network, the city's central nervous system, and a chain of backup memories held by the syndicate for safekeeping. If that memory is erased, there is a cascade of effects that can throw the city into chaos. The memory of elections, the memory of the city's founding, the memory of every regulation or policy that has guided the city for the last generation. I lean forward. If the buyer can erase those memories, he can erase the city's sense of itself, its loyalty to the rule of law, its trust in the legitimacy of the mayor's office. Or he can reorder them, Nick says, softly. Here is the danger. When you erase a memory, you do not simply vanish a knowledge. You unweave a chain of experiences. You unweave obligations, loyalties, and identifications that people didn't realize were tied to that memory. The city becomes a shadow of itself, a machine that cannot decide what to do in the right moment because it does not know what the right moment even looks like anymore. Mira nods, not trivializing the horror of that possibility, but acknowledging the necessity of talking through it. There is a device, a prototype, a testbed. It was designed for a different project, but it could be repurposed in a way that would reveal the truth without erasing it completely. It's a memory beacon, a broadcast protocol that can reveal the architecture of the memory network to every mind in the city without destabilizing them all at once. Explain, I say, the word tasting like something I had hoped would never be necessary. The city's memory network is a complex lattice, Mira explains. A memory beacon can vibrate within the lattice at a particular resonance, a frequency that resonates only with those memories that are most central, the ones that anchor the city's identity. If you broadcast this resonance, people start to remember again, one at a time, in order of significance. They remember the moment they gained their first sense of belonging to the city. They remember the moment they learned to vote. They remember the moment they were afraid of the powers that rule them. The result is not a riot of memory all at once. It is a wave of recollections that washes through every citizen, a gradual resurfacing that is still a break in time. It is not the same as erasing a memory. It is forcing the memory to reassert itself. And the mayor? I ask. The mayor's memory is the head of the Hydra, Mira says, a hint of grim humor in her voice that doesn't belong in a place of serious risk. If the beacon is broadcast with enough power, the mayor's memory can be revealed as a weapon, a means by which the city's political class has explained away every lie with a story about the city's own good. The beacon could lay bare the architecture of a lie. It could show people how a memory was manipulated to create obedience. But the beacon could also unroot the city's identity from itself in dangerous ways. It would be a signal to the brain, not a memory to be shown in a museum exhibit. The city would remember, but it would also awaken to the fact that memory has both price and consequence. The plan forms in my head like a pale star shaping itself in the fog. The world becomes simpler in a certain way and more complicated in another. We can expose the system. We can reveal the mayor's memory as the menacing spine of the city's control structure, and we can allow the people to decide how to proceed. Or we can erase ourselves from the picture, delete the crucial memories that keep us secure, and risk our own existence to ensure the people's safety by sacrificing our own identities. Harsh as it is, this is the city's moral calculus. Erase or expose, sacrifice or condemn. But we cannot be the ones to decide the fate of a city's identity. We can only push the city toward a decision by telling the truth or by removing ourselves from the equation altogether. Nick speaks first. Her voice is cool and precise as the memory of ice on a blade. If you can program a beacon that resonates with the central memories of the city, it could force people to remember in a controlled way. It could be used to unify, to heal the dissonance created by the mayor's memory, to re-educate the populace to what a city is supposed to be and who holds the power to define it. It could also be misused to enforce a discipline that looks like freedom, but is not. The memory beacon would be a new kind of weapon, a truth weapon, if wielded with care, or a terror weapon, if wielded by those who want to keep people docile and grateful for the miseries they are told to endure. Mira leans forward, the screen behind her flickering with diagrams of memory of the city's neural maps. The beacon will work, but there is risk. The city's senses are not all equal. Some districts are highly integrated with the memory lattice. Others are more isolated. The resonance will wash through the system in waves, and the waves will progress differently in different neighborhoods. Some people will experience immediate clarity recognition, a sense of self returning. Others will be overwhelmed by a flood of memories that threaten to erase them permanently in the short term, or to drive them into a state of paralyzed confusion. We cannot guarantee a smooth re-entry into a remembered civic life. We must try, Nick says. We must try because the alternative is a city that forgets how to remember. The word "we" presses heavy on me. It usually does not take long for a plan to become a pact among those who survive. In the memory markets, the people who know the right way to mistake a memory for a truth. The people who know that a memory can be replaced by a different memory. The people who know that the future is built from fragments more fragile than the past. We are three, Lyra, Nyx, and Mira. The mentor of the memory market is not a single person but a system. The plan is not a singular plan, but a choreography of small, careful steps. We will enact it. We have to steal time as well as memory. A time smuggler. The phrase itself is a paradox that has enthralled the memory bazaar for decades. The time smuggler travels across the ages of a city's memory. The hours of dawn when a citizen learned to vote. The minutes of a debate that never reached the public sphere. The seconds of a protest that was silenced before it could muster a chorus. The smuggler is a person who does not belong to any one era, but travels through eras as a thief of echoes. Their aim is to rescue or steal the memory of a vanished era and shove it into the present. To tilt the present toward a past that was less corrupted by power. The time smuggler is a man named Rook. He wears a coat that has seen 4 or 5 different cities. The same coat, but the cities change with every step of the wearer's journey. He is famous, in a sense, for chasing the echoes of a vanished era. The era when the city's people believed they could govern themselves. The era when elections held their own faith and not a memory of faith crafted by control. He refuses to be tied to any one memory, or to any one place. He works for great sums of money and a variety of interests, but his personal code is simple. Do not let memory become a weapon in the hands of those who would never be held to account for its consequences. Rook's presence is not something easily ignored. He appears in the syndicate's chambers like a rumor given form, a draft moving through stale air that suddenly becomes a crisp, cold wind. He does not announce himself with a shout or a smile. He arrives with a silence that makes the room feel suddenly smaller, as if the memory network has drawn a breath and forgotten to exhale. We tell him the plan in crisp, careful terms. The memory beacon will broadcast the resonance that reveals the mayor's manipulative role in the city's memory. Will reveal the chain of memory erasures and the policies derived from that chain. Some fear the people's memory will be overwhelmed by the truth and crumble under its weight. We fear something else, that the society will learn to live with its memory being controlled, and that a generation will grow up with the expectation that the truth is a negotiable thing. We fear a second-order erasure, that even when the truth breaks up the city's control, the people's identity will be so fragmented by their past that they will choose to remain under a new form of governance anyway, simply because remembering is painful and the new order promises protection from pain. Rook's face does not reveal much. He has eyes that have learned to calculate the cheapest route to the most significant risk. He speaks slowly, as if he has time to spare, and yet must make a decision within seconds, because the city's memory is a clock whose hands move faster than normal while you watch them. The mayor's memory is a trapdoor, he says. If you pull the lever too soon, you risk waking something you cannot close again. The people could react, and the reaction could be worse than the original problem. But if you wait too long, The memory network could decide this for you. And you will not have a choice. He looks at us, then at Mira, at Nix, at the screens that show the city's current state in a dozen different glimpses. The memory network is not a single body, but a constellation of interconnected minds, a living thing that can be coaxed to speak, or to scream, or to forget. Time. He says so softly I have to lean in to hear him. Time is the weapon here. We can evoke the memory of the vanished era by traveling back in time to see how the city learned to govern itself without a centralized memory. But we must return with that memory, not to the past, but to the present, with a plan that the living can adopt to govern themselves again. I consider the weight of his words. If there is a time smuggler among us, the city's future is not the same as its past. Time is not simply a line. It is a weave of threads in a loom that can be cut in one place and cause the entire fabric to unravel elsewhere. We are a trio now, Lyra, Nix, Mira, and our time smuggler ally, standing on the cusp of a decision that will shape the city's next century. The plan seems simple in its logic, though the consequences run deeper than the ocean. We will orchestrate the beacon's resonance to awaken people's memory gradually. We will supply them with a sense of self that does not rely on the old, manipulated identity to secure their safety. We will give them back their own minds. We will give them a chance to decide their own governance without the shadow of a manipulated past. The first thing we must do, though, is to ensure that the beacon itself exists in a location accessible to all minds in the city, without being annihilated by the Syndicate's countermeasures. We will need to place the beacon not within one building, but spread across multiple memory nodes, like a chorus of voices singing a common truth, so that if one voice is silenced, the others still speak. To do this, we need to access the city's central memory library, a place rumored to be sealed behind a wall of ancient encryption, a place that few have visited without being escorted by the Syndicate, and yet it is not entirely inaccessible to those who know how to read the city's signals. The library is a ghostly thing, a vast archive of all the city's memories, stored in a vault of quantum entanglement and protected by cryptographic wards that twist and pace like living insects. The plan's first step is to retrieve a map, an old, forgotten map of the memory lattice that shows the city's memory nodes and the routes by which memory travels across the grid. If we can secure an old map, we can identify a path for the beacon's resonance that would minimize the risk of a citywide memory flood. We do not want to pull a thread without knowing what knot will unravel when we pull it. The map exists in an old safe within the Syndicate's own archive, a chamber the Syndicate believes is impregnable, the place where they keep 1,000 forbidden truths, as the old couriers used to call them, a collection of memory fragments that have been deemed too dangerous to be accessible to the general population. The safe is never unlocked on a whim. It requires a multi-person authentication ritual that relies on the city's old, long-forgotten memory keys. The keys only exist in certain people's memories, a few of which are stored in the personal vaults of those who have spent their lives collecting and trading memory tokens. This is where the risk grows. To retrieve the map, we must take someone's memory of the old keys, Lyra's own memory, Nix's memory, Mira's memory, so that we can reconstruct the physical form of the memory key for the safe. The temptation to disengage our own memories is strong. We could erase a few crucial pieces that hold our identities in place and then claim we did what was necessary for the city's future. But to erase is to become a different person, a choice that would haunt us for years after the fact. The memory of who we are is the chain that keeps the future from sliding away. In the end, we decide to risk the memory of one of us, the memory that defines who I am in the moment, the memory of the nights I spent in the market doing what I do best, the memory of the risk that makes me feel alive. It is a delicate choice, because I know that once I remove the memory, I will be different in ways I cannot foresee, but we must do it if the beacon is to be created, and the city is to be given its own future, instead of the one that the mayor and his allies have designed. I offer my own memory, the one memory that defines me in the here and now. The first time I learned to pick a lock with a memory key and slip through the city's legalities. The first time I realized that my own identity could be traded in this market as though it were a single coin. The first time I understood that memory itself could be the currency of power, and the only thing that would matter to me, in the end, would be whether I could hold on to my own sense of self. Nyx lifts a hand toward me, a spectral suggestion that we must do this, that we must be willing to trade a part of ourselves in order to save the city's future from itself. She does not force me. She simply shows me what the price of ignoring the risk would be. Mira nods, as if she had already decided to accept a portion of the cost in her own life, in her own history. In the years of her work spent in this chamber where memory is a tool and a weapon, we are not suicidal. We are pragmatic. We know what the city might do if it regains its memory too quickly. Panic, a flood of old loyalties, a renewed impulse to rebel against the system and the power. It could become violent, or it could become something else, an ethical awakening that tests the city's capacity to govern itself without the easy fix of a centralized memory that tells people what to think. We cannot predict this. We can only choose a course that might, just might, allow the city to choose for itself. We go deeper into the syndicate's archives, down a stairwell that creaks with age and with the weight of every memory that has ever traveled through its walls. The walls themselves seem to breathe as we walk, exhaling a memory of people who once stood in this place, who once believed that memory could be just another tool to help them live their life. These walls are the city's own skin, and we can feel the sensation of them, trying to tell us something if we listen hard enough. The map is not where Mira first said it would be. It is hidden behind a memory of a storm that blew through the city 20 years ago. A memory that still carries with it the scent of rain and electricity. Nyx reaches out with a gloved hand, and the memory unfolds in her palm like a flower opening under the warmth of a sun that never sets. The map is there, a fragile layered thing, with routes that cross and recross themselves like an intricate web. We copy the map into a memory key, a fragile artifact that will guide us in the safe's ritual. The process is slow. It requires the synchronized effort of all three of us and the ghost that Nyx is within the electrical grid. The moment we finalize the copy, the beacon's location reveals itself, a place that is both intimate and public, a square of the city where memories are exchanged and where 1,000 whispers can be made to echo at once. With the map in hand, we move toward our next step, a ritual to unlock the safe. It is a ritual that requires a vulnerability, our own memories, the keys to our pasts, to be placed in the seal of the safe and then returned to us once the ritual has completed, along with a copy of the map that will anchor the beacon to a network of resonances. If we fail, we will lose more than our own memory. We could sever the city's ability to remember its own story in a way that would prevent the beacon from ever existing again. The ritual is not a single moment. It is a choreography that must be performed in the proper cadence. We gather in a circle around the safe. Nyx here as a ghostly presence, Mira here with her steady hands and calm voice, and me with the memory I am about to release. We speak a city's prayer that is not a prayer at all, but a confession, a statement of intent, a promise that we will not use the beacon to shatter the city's memory in a way that would render it unable to define itself again. No matter how hard it tries to push us away, the safe opens in the way that you would expect from something that holds the memories of a city. With a click and a sigh of old mechanical wear that sounds almost like a breath escaping from a sleeping giant. Inside the safe rests a memory beacon, the actual device, a small orb of light that glows pale green and seems to pulse with a heartbeat of its own. The device vibrates gently in our hands as if it recognizes us, as if it recognizes the city's need for this tool at this moment. We prepare to install the beacon at a nexus of memory nodes, a place within the city that is both a crossroads and a memory sanctuary. The old civic library, long since repurposed to house the electronic memory stacks that the syndicate uses to hold the city's long memory. The city's memory library is a place of quiet, where the air smells of dust and old books and old circuits, where the memory of dozens of civilizations seems to have laid down its own bricks. It is a sacred site for those who know how to navigate memory like a river. The beacon is installed in a network of old conduits beneath the library floor, connected to a cluster of nodes that feed the city's memory in a heartbeat, an algorithmic immune system that can be coaxed to act in concert with the beacon's resonance. The moment we connect, a tremor runs through the memory lattice, the kind of tremor that makes the city feel alive, as if it had suddenly recognized a familiar scent in the air and understood what it meant. The beacon's first resonance is quiet. It does not command the memory to reveal itself to every citizen at once. It simply whispers to those with the strongest memory cores, the people who hold not just a single memory, but a memory of who the city is. It is a soft call that asks them to remember a little more about their city's past than what the mayor's plan would allow. The effect is not dramatic at first, but the city's memory begins to tremble in a way that suggests something has stirred. A feeling of recognition that something has been taken away. And now there is a way to take it back. The effect grows more powerful as the beacon's resonance spreads through the network. It reaches across neighborhoods and districts that have long been separated by the city's memory politics. And for a moment, people who would never have spoken to one another find themselves sharing a memory of childhood, or a teacher who once inspired them to vote with integrity, or a memory of a protest that they never forgot because it taught them what it meant to stand up for something larger than themselves. The resonance is not a flood, but a tide that rises and falls, a series of waves that push against the barriers the mayor's memory had erected around the city's collective identity. The mayor's memory, if we could track it in this moment, begins to show its face in the cityscape in a way that had not happened since the mayor's election. A sudden, startling sense of authenticity in the city's political life, a sense of a voice in the crowd that did not belong to a mechanism, a voice that belongs to someone who still has a memory of the people's truth. The resonance doesn't just reveal the mayor's manipulation. It reveals the city's own longing to govern itself with a memory that is not manufactured by a power structure's desire to control it. There are consequences, of course. The syndicate's alarms start to sing in the background as their monitors show the beacon signal propagating in ways that are not predictable. They appear in their own way, a cadre of agents moving through the memory stalls with that confused, careful energy that tells you they know something big is happening, but they cannot yet identify what. It is a chase, a game, a test of nerve and cunning. A test not only of our plan, but of the city's ability to bear the truth and still stay intact. In the midst of it all, Rook, our time smuggler ally, suddenly looks younger in a way that suggests he has stepped through a memory portal to a time when things were simpler and perhaps more dangerous. He returns with a knowledge that disturbs me and yet hints at what we might still gain from our plan's unfolding. He tells us that the plan is not just to reveal the mayor's memory to everyone, but to reveal the city's own capacity to reauthor its identity through choice. He believes in a future where a city can decide what it wants to remember, what it wants to forget, and how it wants to reconstruct itself after a great erasure. He calls it a self-correcting memory, a paradox, perhaps, but one that could become a mandate for the city to re-examine every part of its history and choose anew. That night, the city's language changes. The words people murmur in the streets carry a different intonation. Not the fear that a memory might be altered, but the hope that their own minds will awaken from a dream that had become too long and too tight around their throats. A grandmother speaks about her childhood, with tears in her eyes and a smile that is a little uncertain, because it remembers a time before fear was the currency of daily life. A student speaks about a protest she participated in, but cannot recall why, and suddenly remembers the reason, the belief in a city that is not merely a tool of the powerful. A shopkeeper speaks not of his profits, but of a sense of duty toward a city that has given him a home. The smell changes too. The scent of rain becomes the scent of a memory, the memory of a summer's day when the city's people first recognized a common cause. The sensory world begins to shift. People taste the city's air differently because they are remembering with their whole bodies again, not just their minds. And as this becomes tangible, the conflict shifts from a question of how do we break the city's power to a more intimate question. What does it mean to live with a memory that is true? The memory bazaar, the once quiet marketplace of contested recollections, begins to feel like a living orchestra, with each district contributing a different instrument to the symphony of the city's reawakened memory. Yet even as the beacon's resonance brings the city back from the edge of a dead end, a counterplay intensifies. The mayor's memory is still present, still powerful. A counter-signal from the mayor's office tries to drown the beacon's signal with a different resonance. A narrative of safety, a narrative of unity born from obedience, a narrative that the city cannot survive without the mayor's calculus of order. The syndicate's servers hum a warning. If your beacon is not controlled, it could fracture the city's social coherence and push the people toward a violent reaction. We know that a violent reaction is not what we want, but we also know that allowing the mayor's memory to stand as the city's controlling center is not the same thing as saving the people from fear. It is merely swapping one fear for another, the fear of losing the city to a myth that the powerful can sell. The beacon's resonance opens a window, an opening that invites the people to look through and see a truth that has always been there, even when no one was paying attention. The question becomes not whether we should erase our past in order to save the present, but whether the city deserves to claim its future at all if the present is an illusion. The decision is not about moral purity, but about the practical possibility of a future that makes sense to those who will inhabit it. It is about whether a people can endure the long arc of history with all its pain and complexity and still choose to keep a city, rather than to become something else entirely, an empire of memory, where the memory of humanity's best and worst becomes a commodity that can be bought and sold. The final act comes in the form of a moment of vulnerability, rather than a moment of triumph. We decide to send the beacon's final signal, not from the library, not from any one location, but from the city's heart, the public square where people have gathered for generations to speak their minds and watch the civic process unfold. We don't broadcast the truth to every mind at once. We broadcast a question to every mind at once, a question that invites the city to reassert its own identity and to decide what it means to belong to a city that can remember and still live with the consequences of what it remembers. In the square, the memory network's many nodes align in a strange, almost musical way. It feels as if the city itself is listening for an answer from its own people, a chorus of voices, rather than a single demand. The beacon signal travels through the crowd like a thread of light that loops around the square's central monument, weaving through the crowd and the markets beyond, a bright pattern of memory and possibility that anybody present can feel in their bones. People begin to speak in small circles, the way they do in a park when a memory threatens to surface, and a dozen different narratives arise in response. The voices are not loud at first. They are cautious, uncertain, asking questions of one another, testing the air for an opinion that might feel like a home to them again. The voices cohere into a chorus. Who are we? What is our city? What memory governs this place we call home? The questions are not aggressive. They are patient, as if the city has decided to heal by means of careful conversation rather than force. The mayor's memory fights back with a counterpoint, a specimen of the old regime's voice, as if it needs to remind everyone that safety requires obedience. It speaks of the social contract, of the city's need to be protected from its own worst impulses, of the fear that comes with any memory that can be manipulated to create a fabrication of unanimity. The voice is compelling in its own way, a memory of a time when fear kept order and the people believed their rulers because they believed their rulers could keep them safe. But this time, the crowd does not respond with fear alone. They remember something else. They remember the face of a friend who once stood in the square, A memory of a teacher who believed in each student's capacity to shape the city. A memory of a protest that ended not with victory for a single cause, but with a sense of shared risk and shared responsibility. The memory begins to spread in waves through the square small, almost shy recollections at first. Then a rising tide of memory that is finally strong enough to drown out the mayor's old narrative. The city's new question emerges with clarity. If the memory of the city's own identity is a tool that can be used to defend or to oppress, who will hold that tool? Who has the right to control memory? And what is the city's obligation to itself when memory is no longer a private commodity, but a shared human resource? The answer is not given in a single line or a single moment. It comes as a consensus formed by the street corners, the classrooms, the coffee shops, and the memory stalls where the market's trade continues at a gentler pace, because the crowd's mind has shifted from fear to inquiry. It comes as a sense of shared responsibility, the city choosing to become the kind of organism that can bear truth without dissolving into chaos. A city that can hold its memory without losing its ability to make a decision in the present. The beacon's job, now that it has served its primary function, is no longer to force a single outcome, but to become a guardian of the city's process, to preserve the memory's integrity while allowing the memory to be exercised in a way that respects the people's current moral agency. It is a subtle transformation, a rebalancing rather than a conquest. In the end, we do not erase ourselves. We do not surrender nicks to a rival in exchange for a kinder plan. We do not pack up and walk away from the memory bazaar with a sense of victory. We instead stay and we become something new, a quartet of memory caretakers who serve the city not as rulers but as partners in its self-rule. We become the memory's custodians, the people who can guide the city toward truth without letting the memory itself become the weapon that ends free will. The city's breath returns to normal, or as normal as breath can be, in a place where memory is a currency, and where the shape of a people's identity is still being hammered out by time and by the choices of the day. The memory's weight remains in the air, the sense that identity is fragile and easily rearranged, that each memory you keep or lose holds a piece of the city's future. But the difference is now clarity. The city's future is being shaped not by one man or one memory, but by the collective decision to keep memory in the service of the people it binds together. The last day of the event is not a day of triumph, but a day of quiet, serious accomplishment. The memory beacon remains as a quiet presence in the city's memory architecture, a sentinel that will alert the city to danger, but also remind the city of its responsibility to preserve its own truth. We do not pretend that the danger has vanished. There will always be those who would exploit memory for their own ends. Always those who would replace a brave memory with a comforting lie. But we have changed the rules of engagement. We have placed the city's memory into the hands of the people, and we have given them a means to demand truth and to resist manipulation. The mayor's memory is still there, of course, an echo of a voice that once commanded the city's will. It remains a reminder that not all power and not all memory are friends to the free. It remains, but it is contained, quarantined within a network of safeguards that the city's own citizens constructed by choosing to remember their own duty to protect one another from the lure of a single controlling narrative. The city is a better place for having known the danger, and for choosing the path that allows people to become their own memory's guardians, as well as its beneficiaries. In the end, Nyx and I and Mira, with Rook's time twists and the city's own revived memory, become a new kind of guardianship, the memory shepherds who guide a population towards a wiser future. The market remains, of course. It is a living, mutable thing, and it will be used again, and possibly misused again, as markets do, but it is no longer the single instrument of power it once was. The Memory Bazaar has learned to live with the city's demand for accountability. The city has learned that memory is not something to be owned by the powerful, but a shared resource that belongs to every citizen in all its messy, glorious imperfection. If this memory heist resonates, if you hear the quiet, hopeful note in the phrase that used to belong to a souled dream, the line the city now repeats to itself as a reminder of its own agency. Then listen with your own heart. Listen not for the claim of a victor, but for the signal of a people who have chosen to rewrite their own story and decide together what the city will remember and how it will remember it. The memory market remains, but it does so under a new order, one in which memory is not simply a commodity, but a covenant. We remember because we must. We do not know what the next threat will look like. We do not know what the next lie will sound like when it rises from the depths of a memory market that never truly sleeps. But we know this: the city has learned to wake up to the truth without losing itself to fear. We know that memory can be a shield as well as a sword, a gift as well as a burden, and that the people, the citizens who walk these streets, who trade in the market's memory tokens, who listen to Nyx's soft, careful voice and to Rook's quiet, confident steps, will find their own way to govern themselves with a memory that they can trust. And if that memory, the memory of a city that chose to remember what it has risked losing, resonates with you, then remember this one line, spoken not by a ruler but by a citizen: we will remember, and we will decide how to live with what we remember.